But that was actually the job of the apprentice, was to grind the ink.
Grinding for the master.
For the master. In the old days, the master didn't waste his time, grinding ink. When he sat down to write with his brush, the ink was already there.
Right. And this is also a very great hobby that husband and wife can both enjoy together.
Yeah, she's also studying calligraphy, but she's studying a different character. She's studying the Kai Shu, which is the modern script that you see today. Yeah.
And you say your style or the script of the character is from what dynasty?
The Han Dynasty, back over 2,000 years ago.
That's the style you write here.
This is a Li Shu script. And to give you an idea, this is basically how it looks. These are rubbings that they've taken off of tombstones. This character, Bei, means a tombstone. So back in the Han Dynasty, when somebody died, they would have a stone cutter and would etch out these words on the grave marker or the tombstone. And then later on, people who wanted to study this writing. I have to say one thing about this writing. This writing was not available to the common Chinese during the Han Dynasty. This was only available to the people working in the government or in the court, in the palace. Women didn't write calligraphy. This was only men, and it was limited to the rich people.
Only them are allowed to write them.
The farmers could not learn this. So this was not available to the farmers. And because it's over 2,000 years ago, there are not too many examples of this kind of writing. So what few examples are available are usually tombstone rubbings or from plaques on the temple or something like that.
I see.
And they come in bits and pieces, like this one here. This is a complete text that was found at a tomb. And you can see like some of these are chipped. So you don't see the character, some of the rocks and whatever. 2,000 years of time have taken its toll on the stone.
Well, Louie, let's hold there for a second. We need to take a break. When we come back, let's look into this style writing further.
Okay,
it's all very interesting.
Thank you, Henry.
Welcome back. During the break, you actually shared a very interesting story with us. A lot of these arts are, losing people practicing them because you mentioned that people, instead of writing, they're using keyboard. So they lose the way or the know-how to actually write these, beautiful forms. But you share an interesting story about you never used ballpoint pen, but only fountain pen. Would you like to share that? I think it was very interesting.
Well, I've been using the fountain pen now for over 30 years, and everybody thinks that I'm old-fashioned because nowadays very few people use a fountain pen because the ink takes so long to dry.
Right.
And they asked me, well, why do you use a fountain pen when everybody else is using ballpoint pen and speedballs and whatever?
Right.
I said, because when I was young, I met this Jewish lawyer, and he had a Mont Blanc pen, was as big as a cigar, and he was signing documents and the checks and all that. And I asked him, well, why do you use a fountain pen, sir? And he answered, he says, because when I put the pen to the paper, it's permanent. I don't change my mind. Right. I can't erase fountain pen ink. So once I put the pen to the paper, I already made up my mind. I'm not going to change my mind.
Right.
So I thought that was a good philosophy because I remember in school people taking a test and they erase and blow and erase and keep changing the answer.
Right.
And I figured I don't want to live life like that, changing, 打不定主义, always changing.
Change your mind.
Change your mind. So when I sign something,
you want to stick to it.
Yeah, and the same thing is reflected with a Chinese brush. Once you put the brush to the paper, you cannot erase your mistake. It's permanent.
Right.
So you have to think ahead what the character is going to look like before the brush hits the paper, because by then it's too late to change your mind.
Right. There's a lot of philosophy in doing calligraphy, right? Like just one example you just mentioned. What other things you learned, not just simply writing calligraphy, but your life lessons that you learned from doing calligraphy?
Well, I think calligraphy, for one thing, it's helped me revisit the Chinese language. Mm-hmm. I use the dictionary more often to look up words. I use the proverb. I look for more Chinese proverbs so that I can write Chinese proverbs, because Chinese like lucky sayings.
Right.
And I'm always trying to find a new expression that I can use, and at the same time learn a new character. Writing it with my brush. Mm-hmm. As with anything, any course of study, the most important thing is you have to have a good teacher. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have access to a good teacher, you need a good book.
Right.
Otherwise, you're sailing in the dark. Mm-hmm. And you also have to have interest. You can't set a timeline. Say, well, I'm going to master this in 1 year, and then I'll be great.
It's a lifelong.
It's a lifelong thing, and you have to do it often, frequently. You just can't write this for New Year's and then put the pen down and wait and do it again the next year. You have to do it, as often as you can. Otherwise, you lose your skill.